The air in the Ikoyi bridal suite smelled of expensive oud and nervous sweat. Teniola looked at herself in the ornate gilded mirror, her $14,000 custom lace gown hugging every curve. She looked like a queen, but she was planning a coup. "Tenny, you are playing with fire," her maid of honor, Bisola, whispered, clutching a stack of gold-embossed envelopes. "You actually sent them? All 5 of them?" Teniola didn't turn around. She adjusted a diamond earring that cost more than a small SUV. "Fire purifies, BC. My fiancé, Segun, thinks he's marrying a woman with no history. He wants a blank slate. Well, I'm giving him the full library." In Nigeria, a wedding isn't just a union, it's a theater of status. Usually you hide your exes in the dark corners of your past. Teniola had done the opposite. She had hand-delivered invitations to the 5 men who had broken, used, or underestimated her over the last decade. There was Femi, the billionaire's son who dumped her via a WhatsApp status update. There was Kunle, the pastor who stole her inheritance for his ministry. Then there was Chidi, the gym rat who cheated with her own cousin. "They won't come," Bisola insisted. "They had shame." "Men like that don't have shame, they have egos," Teniola replied, her voice cold. "I promised them a front row seat to the deal of a lifetime. They think I'm offering them a way back into my bank account or my bed. They have no idea I'm actually offering them a funeral." Outside, the sounds of the talking drums began to pulse through the walls. The Asoebi girls were arriving in a sea of emerald green. The party was starting. Teniola picked up her bouquet, which concealed a small, high-frequency recording device. "Today, everyone gets exactly what they deserve," she said. The twist wasn't just that they were invited, it was that Segun, the man waiting at the altar, had no idea that his 4 groomsmen and his best man were the very 5 men Teniola had invited. She hadn't just invited her exes, she had let her unsuspecting fiancé pick them, unaware of their history with her bride-to-be. The trap was set. The shock was barely minutes away. The grand doors of the cathedral swung open, revealing a floral arrangement that cost the equivalent of a Lagos penthouse. As the organist struck the first chord of the wedding march, the congregation held its breath. Teniola stepped forward, her father's arm trembling slightly under her grip. But Teniola's eyes weren't on the altar. They were scanning the line of men standing to the right of her groom. There they were, the Brotherhood. Segun had met them all in business circles over the last year. He bragged about his high society friends, unaware that Teniola had meticulously engineered every chance meeting. She had practically scripted their friendships, ensuring Segun would choose them as his groomsmen. As she walked, she caught Femi's eye. He smirked, adjusting his emerald green agbada. He still thought he was the one who got away, the secret lover who would continue to see Teniola after the vows were exchanged. Next to him, Kunle, the fraudulent pastor, flashed a holy grin, likely calculating how much of Segun's wealth he could siphon into his fake foundation. When Teniola reached the altar, Segun took her hand, his face glowing with pride. "You look breathtaking," he whispered. "I feel like a new woman," her smile razor sharp. The ceremony proceeded with agonizing slowness. The priest spoke of submission and purity, concepts that felt like a joke in a room filled with this much deceit. During the exchange of rings, Teniola purposely fumbled. The ring rolled toward Chidi, the gym rat groomsman. As he bent down to pick it up, Teniola leaned in close, her veil brushing his ear. "I know about the video you recorded in London, Chidi, and I know who you sold it to." Chidi froze, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. He handed the ring back with a hand that shook visibly. Segun noticed nothing, too busy preening for the official photographer. The I do's were exchanged, but as the priest declared them husband and wife, the air in the church shifted. Teniola didn't go for the traditional kiss. Instead, she turned to the audience, taking the microphone from the bewildered priest. "Before we head to the reception," Teniola announced, her voice booming through the speakers, "I want to thank my husband's groomsmen. These 5 men have taught me everything I know about loyalty." The 5 exes exchanged nervous, triumphant glances. They thought this was their moment of glory. They didn't realize the reception hall was already rigged with screens that were about to play a very different kind of wedding video. The reception at the Echo Hotel ballroom was a masterclass in Nigerian opulence. Champagne flowed like the Niger River, and the scent of spicy jollof rice filled the air. The 5 exes sat at the king's table, feeling like the masters of the universe. They were drinking Segun's vintage cognac, mocking him behind his back, and waiting for their private moments with the bride. Teniola and Segun made their grand entry, dancing through a cloud of dry ice. But as they reached the high table, Teniola didn't sit. She signaled to the DJ. The music cut out abruptly, replaced by a low, rhythmic humming. "Ladies and gentlemen," Teniola began, standing tall at the center of the stage. "Marriage is built on truth, but my journey here was paved with lies. I invited 5 special guests today, the men standing right there." She pointed to the groomsmen. The crowd went silent. Segun looked confused. "Tenny, what are you doing? Sit down." "Oh, I'm just getting started, darling," she said, patting his hand. Suddenly, the massive LED screens behind her flickered to life. It wasn't a montage of childhood photos, it was a bank statement, specifically Kunle's ministry account, showing a direct transfer of 50 million naira, money he had stolen from Teniola's late mother's estate 3 years ago. The room gasped. Kunle stood up, his face purple. "This is a fabrication, a devil's work." "Is it?" Teniola snapped. "Then why is your private signature on the offshore authorization? And why," she paused as the screen changed to a grainy video, "are you currently on camera in the hotel lobby with the woman you told everyone was your sister, but who was actually your 3rd secret wife?" The cameras in the lobby, which Teniola had paid the hotel security to tap into, showed Kunle's sister screaming at a hotel staffer about her husband's wedding guest status. The scandal was officially ignited. The aunties in the front row began to hiss. But Teniola wasn't done. She turned her gaze toward Femi, the billionaire's son. "Femi, you told Segun you'd help him secure the oil contract in the Delta, didn't you, in exchange for access to his new wife?" Segun's head whipped around to face his best friend. "Femi? What is she talking about?" Femi tried to laugh it off. "She's crazy, Segun. The wedding stress has broken her." "I'm not broken, Femi," Teniola said, clicking a remote. "I'm recorded." The ballroom speakers crackled. A voice filled the room. Femi's voice. It was a recording from a boys' night 2 weeks prior, a night Teniola had facilitated by accidentally leaving her high-end recording device in Segun's study. "Segun is a mope," Femi's voice sneered through the speakers. "He has no idea Tenny was mine first. I'm going to let him pay for the house, pay for the cars, and when he's busy at the office, I'll be the one she actually calls. He's just a glorified ATM with a wedding ring." The silence that followed was deafening. Segun stood up, his chair clattering to the floor. His face was a mask of pure rage. He looked at the man he had called his brother and saw a predator. But Teniola didn't let him speak. She moved to the next man. "And then there's Chidi. Chidi, who told my husband he was a fitness consultant, but was actually blackmailing me with photos from 5 years ago. Photos he thought I'd pay anything to hide." Chidi began to back away toward the exit, but the bouncers, men Teniola had personally hired from a private firm, blocked the doors. "I didn't pay him," Teniola told the shocked guests. Instead, I sent those photos to his fiancée, the daughter of the IG of police. She's waiting in the parking lot, Chidi, and she brought her father's orderlies. Chidi turned pale and nearly collapsed. The shock the title promised was beginning to manifest as a total systematic dismantling of every man who had ever hurt her. The guests were on their feet, phones out, recording every second. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a televised execution of reputations. Segun turned to Teniola, his voice shaking. You knew? You knew all of this and you let me bring them into our lives? You let me trust them? Teniola looked at him with a pity that hurt worse than a slap. I had to let you see who you really are, Segun. You didn't choose these men because they were good. You chose them because they made you feel powerful. You liked their bad boy energy. You liked being part of the club. You were so busy being one of the boys that you never bothered to be a husband. I'm your husband now, he yelled. Are you? Teniola asked, reaching for the lace at her neck. She pulled a hidden tab, and the front of her expensive gown literally unzipped, revealing a sleek white jumpsuit underneath. She stepped out of the heavy skirt like a snake shedding skin. Check the marriage license we signed in the vestry, Segun. The room buzzed like a hive of angry hornets. Segun scrambled to the high table, grabbing the leather-bound folder containing the marriage documents they had signed just an hour ago. His hands fumbled with the pages until he found the signature line. His eyes widened. Where his name should have been legally binding him to Teniola, there was a specialized power of attorney clause tucked into the fine print of the marriage settlement document. A document his own lawyer, who happened to be Teniola's cousin, had prepared. What is this? Segun gasped. It's a full confession and a transfer of the consultancy fees you've been skimming from your father's firm, Teniola said calmly, sipping a glass of water. You see, Segun, you're not just a victim of bad friends, you're a thief. You've been using my personal accounts to launder your side earnings, thinking I was too blinded by the Mrs. title to notice. The crowd erupted. This was the ultimate Nigerian wedding scandal. The bride hadn't just exposed her exes, she had snared the groom in a legal trap. You can't do this, Segun screamed. We're married. Technically, Teniola said, checking her diamond-encrusted watch, the man who officiated the ceremony was an actor. The real priest was delayed by a flat tire I arranged. You're not married to me, Segun. You're just caught. The 5 exes were now huddled together. Their collective power evaporated. They were no longer the big boys of Lagos. They were exposed frauds. Femi was looking at his phone, realizing his father had already seen the viral clips and had cut off his credit cards. Kunle was being approached by 2 men in suits who didn't look like wedding guests. They looked like fraud investigators. Teniola walked to the center of the dance floor. You all thought I was a prize to be won or a ladder to be climbed. You thought my silence was weakness. She looked at the 5th ex, a man who had remained silent the whole time, Tokumbo. He was the one who had truly broken her heart, the one who had left her at the altar 5 years ago. He was the one she had saved for last. Tokumbo, she whispered, the microphone catching the tremor in her voice. You thought I invited you here to show you what you missed, but I invited you here to show you what you created. Tokumbo stood up slowly. Unlike the others, he didn't look angry. He looked terrified. He knew Teniola better than anyone. He knew that when she was this calm, the world was about to end. Tenny, please, Tokumbo said, his voice cracking. I apologized for 5 years ago. I told you I wasn't ready. You weren't ready to marry me, Teniola corrected, but you were ready to take the 5 million naira my father gave you to start our life and use it to flee to Canada with your pregnant girlfriend. Did you think I'd never find out where that money went? The guests gasped. Leaving a woman at the altar is one thing, but stealing her dowry and startup fund is a cardinal sin in Nigerian culture. Teniola's father, a formidable man who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. His face was like granite. "I didn't just invite you to humiliate you, Tokombo," Teniola continued. "I invited you because the girlfriend you fled with, the one you've been sending money to in Canada for the last 5 years, she's been working for me for the last 3. The doors at the back of the hall opened. A woman walked in, holding the hand of a 5-year-old boy. The boy was the spitting image of Tokombo. The woman didn't look like a victim. She looked like an ally. Tokombo's knees hit the floor. "Shade? She told me everything, Tokombo," Teniola said, her voice dripping with icy satisfaction. "The money you've been sending to Canada wasn't going to a secret family. It was going into a trust fund for your son, a trust fund that I control. You've effectively spent the last 5 years paying me back, with interest, thinking you were supporting a secret life." The shock was now a physical force in the room. The 5 exes were ruined. The groom was a fraud without a wife, and Teniola was standing in the middle of it all, the only person in the room who hadn't lost a thing. "You're a monster," Femi spat from the table. "No," Teniola replied, looking at her reflection in the polished marble floor. "I'm a woman who finished her lessons." The wedding was now a crime scene of reputations. Segun was being grilled by his father's lawyers in the corner. Chidi had been dragged out by the police orderlies. Kunle was trying to hide under a tablecloth. Femi was frantically calling anyone who would pick up, but the Lagos High Society had already blocked his number. Teniola turned to her father. He walked over and kissed her forehead. "Are you done, my daughter?" "Almost, Papa," she said. She turned to the crowd, many of whom were her friends who had whispered behind her back for years about her failed relationships and her desperation to get married. "I know what you all said," Teniola told the room, "that I was unlucky, that I was too much, that I should just take any man who offered a ring. Well, today, I took 5 of them, and look at what they are. Are these the kings you wanted me to serve?" The aunties lowered their heads. The friends looked at their shoes. Teniola picked up a glass of the finest champagne, the one Segun had paid for, and raised it. "To the end of an era, and to the beginning of mine." She drank it in one go, then set the glass down on the edge of the stage. She began to walk toward the exit. Bisola, her maid of honor, followed her, carrying Teniola's designer heels. Teniola walked barefoot, her stride confident and light. As she reached the doors, Segun screamed after her, "You'll never find anyone else. No man in this country will touch you after this. You're cursed, Teniola." Teniola stopped at the door. She didn't look back. "I didn't do this to find a man, Segun. I did this to find myself. And it turns out I'm the best company I've ever had." She stepped out into the humid Lagos night. The paparazzi, tipped off by an anonymous source, were waiting. But she didn't hide. She posed. She smiled. She was the most famous woman in Nigeria tonight, and for the first time, it was on her own terms. The sun rose over the Lagos lagoon, painting the water in shades of gold and orange. Teniola sat on the balcony of her private apartment, a laptop open in front of her. The headlines were everywhere. The Red Wedding, how Teniola dismantled the billionaire boys club. Social media was in a frenzy. Half the country called her a villain, the other half called her a hero. She checked her bank balance. The restitution she had extracted from the 5 men, the stolen inheritance from Kunle, the interest from Tokunbo, the diverted consultancy fees from Segun, had cleared. She was now one of the wealthiest independent women in the city. The solo walked onto the balcony, handing her a cup of tea. "So, what's the plan now? You're officially the most dangerous woman in West Africa." Teniola smiled, looking out at the city she had finally conquered. The plan? The plan was to clear the weeds, BC. Now I can finally plant something real. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from a private number. Impressive work yesterday. The board of directors has seen the evidence you provided on Segun's fraud. We'd like to discuss the vacancy for the CEO position. Your father says you're ready. Teniola closed the laptop. She had invited her exes to her wedding not because she wanted a husband, but because she needed a clean slate to build an empire. She had used their own greed, lust, and arrogance as the bricks. The shock wasn't just what they did to her, the cheating, the stealing, the abandoning. The real shock was that she had known it all along, and she had waited until the perfect moment to turn their weapons against them. She stood up, the white jumpsuit still crisp and clean. She wasn't a bride. She wasn't an ex. She was the boss. "BC," she said, grabbing her sunglasses, "call the pilot. I think I've earned a weekend in Zanzibar, and tell him no men allowed." As she walked out of the apartment, the camera she had hidden in the wedding bouquet, now sitting on her coffee table, blinked one last time before she remotely wiped the drive. The past was deleted. The future was hers.
If you have followed us up to this moment, click the subscribe and hit the notifications button never to miss my interesting stories here every day.